Meanwhile, as lawmakers try to work on federal police reform, some cities like Minneapolis and Louisville have already implemented their own reforms, banning chokeholds and restricting no-knock warrants. Elected officials in other cities like Austin, Seattle, New York, and Portland also voted in 2020 to reallocate funds from police agencies to other services like housing and mental health assistance. Let's bring in civil rights lawyer, activist, and former president of the Minneapolis chapter of the NAACP, Nekima Levy-Armstrong, for a look at that change that has already happened and the change that activists are still fighting for. Nekima, how do you feel today knowing the tragedy that the day marks, but also the movement that it sparked?
Well, it's a gift for many of us here in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. May 25th will forever be etched in our minds as the day that we witnessed the lynching of a Black man here in our community in a place that's supposed to be progressive. On the flip side, what we have seen are folks roll up their sleeves and continue to persevere in demanding an end to police violence and police murder and demanding more accountability. We've also seen folks at George Floyd Square who live in that community within the vicinity of where George Floyd was killed take up the mantle of maintaining that intersection, and being able to hold that intersection for a year is unprecedented. We've had other occupations here outside of police stations and the governor's mansion following the deaths of Jamar Clark and Philando Castile. But this, and even after Daunte Wright was killed in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota on April 11th. But this is the longest period of time in which citizens have been able to hold on to what they're considering sacred space in honor of a person who has been killed by police. I think that that's remarkable.
And Nekima, the death of George Floyd prompted this nationwide reckoning on policing in America and a nationwide conversation. Protests broke out across the country with calls to defund the police, among others. So what do you think the long-term impact will be from what happened to George Floyd a year ago?
Well, we have seen significant change happen in other parts of the country. For example, New York City became the first jurisdiction to end qualified immunity. And then we saw the state of Maryland overturn their police bill of rights. We've seen places ban chokeholds and neck restraints and place significant restrictions on no-knock warrants. In Minnesota, we have seen some change, but not nearly enough. We've had a lot of watered-down bills that were passed last year during the legislative session. One of the most significant aspects of the bill that was passed actually included a focus on training for law enforcement surrounding interacting with folks who have underlying mental health issues or autism. And that particular bill was championed by the family of Kobe Heisler, a young Black man who was killed in Brooklyn Center within the last couple of years. And he had an underlying mental health issue. He was suicidal. And rather than police expressing empathy and de-escalating, they killed that young man. And his name was brought up after Daunte Wright was killed. What we have seen happen in Brooklyn Center, actually, is that the mayor has taken a great deal of initiative in terms of pushing for significant change. One of the things that has happened is that there's been a shift now in terms of the conversation surrounding police being able to pull people over for routine traffic stop situations. Now, what they are pushing for in Brooklyn Center is for there to be a different professional entity that has the power to conduct traffic stops, likely an unarmed person, to try to limit the kinds of deadly encounters that we saw that happened to Daunte Wright as well as Philando Castile here in the state of Minnesota. That's a huge shift from business as usual. We think that other jurisdictions should adopt something similar in order to decrease the amount of not only racial profiling, but again, the deadliness that has happened with regard to some of the police traffic stops that have occurred in our state. We have a long way to go in terms of the other changes. So, for example, we proposed a bill to end qualified immunity, which did not gain any real traction here in our legislature. There's been some tinkering around the edges to our arbitration process That process has been used to protect cops who have abused and killed people because arbitrators have a lot of power. They sometimes reopen the door to killer cops being hired back, at their previous department after they go through that process. And so that is a way of usurping the authority of the police chief when he or she decides that a police officer should be fired. And so they've only tinkered around the edges of that particular bill, but it is something we're continuing to push for change to that particular system. We also want to see cases taken out of the hands of county prosecutors and placed into the hands of the attorney general or a special prosecutor. For those who tuned in to the trial prosecution team, as well as a high quality of expert witnesses. And that was because the local county attorney did not try that case. And so we are pushing for that in all the cases going forward. And we just got a victory in the Dante Wright case, where the case has been transferred from a local county attorney to the attorney general because of our demands as community members.
All right, civil rights lawyer and activist Nekima Levy-Armstrong. Nekima, thanks so much for being on with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.